Hello! I'm glad to see you. I'm Florence. Welcome to my channel. For today's story, we have a guest narrator. Please help me in welcoming Dorian.
Hello, I'm Dorian. Welcome to my neighborhood. So, you want to hear a story? I have many to tell, so you're in the right place. But beware, some of my stories may be too intense. I'm just joking. Or am I? Let us begin. Suzanne lived a quiet, lonely life, but she was never truly alone. It was not the tick of the old wall clock her grandmother had given her. It was not the hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. It was not even the purrs and meows of the cat she never owned. It was a presence, a voice. By day, Suzanne was an introverted secretary at an accounting firm. By night, she escaped into crime series, sappy rom-coms, and the countless books stacked around her home. On her bedside table, the kitchen table, and the sofa, she treated each one with care, as if they were her only companions in the world. However, for weeks, Suzanne had been unable to sleep. Exhaustion gnawed at her bones, and sweat-soaked nightmares rattled her mind even when she managed to close her eyes. Her physician recommended a sleep recording app, just to monitor things. So that night, after sanitizing every inch of her small house, Suzanne turned on the app, pulled the duvet over her frail frame, and let herself drift into a rare, heavy sleep. It felt like a reward. For a moment, she was at peace, and then everything changed. She woke hours later, drenched in sweat, disoriented, her chest tight with panic. A noise, a voice had woken her. It was not the clock, it was not the fridge. It was closer, sharper. Her name.
Suzanne.
Chills crawled down her spine. She froze in bed, shaking, heart hammering, eyes locked on the ceiling. The silence thickened, pressing against her ears, but the voice kept coming.
Suzanne. Suzanne.
She squeezed her eyes shut until stars burned behind them, whispering to herself over and over, "It's a dream. It's a dream. It's just a dream."
Suzanne.
She pinched her arm, dug her nails into her palms, anything to wake herself. But the voice did not stop.
Suzanne.
Finally, she rolled to her side, forcing her breath to slow, though fear churned hot in her stomach. The morning light was weak and gray when she made her coffee. She tried to push the night from her mind, telling herself she had imagined it. After all, she sometimes spoke in her sleep. Her therapist had told her it was not unusual. Sometimes she muttered random words, and sometimes she spoke whole sentences. That had to be it. And yet, this felt different. She was certain she had heard an external voice calling her name. Curiosity gnawed at her until she gave in. Suzanne picked up her phone, opened the recording app, and hovered over the play button. Her fingers shook as she tapped it. At first, silence, then the hiss of static, and then her own voice.
Don't touch me! Don't touch me!
Over and over, pleading, desperate.
Don't touch me!
This was not new. She had heard herself speak in her sleep before. But this time it felt different. The words clawed under her skin, because for the first time, Suzanne was not convinced she had been talking to herself. The second night began the same way. Suzanne was a stickler for routine. She had no friends, no family nearby, and she never spoke to her neighbors. Her evenings were always the same: work, home, and silence. That night, the silence pressed harder. To quiet the restless knot in her chest, she cleaned. She always cleaned more when she was stressed. The bathroom tiles were scrubbed until they gleamed, and the kitchen smelled faintly of bleach. When she finally paused, she saw a text glowing on her phone screen. It was from a coworker. The time was 9 p.m. Suzanne frowned. Work could wait until tomorrow. Muttering under her breath, she picked up the phone and read the message.
How are you doing? You looked more stressed than usual at the office today.
Suzanne hissed and set the phone down. She was not in the mood for pity or shallow concern. Instead, she returned to cleaning until her arms ached. By the time she pulled back her duvet, exhaustion had wrapped itself around her body. She switched on the sleep recording app, closed her eyes, and let the fatigue drag her under. It did not take long. Her name, soft, repeated, relentless.
Suzanne. Suzanne. Suzanne.
Her eyes stayed shut.
Suzanne.
She clutched the sheets tighter and whispered to herself that it was a dream, an auditory trick, nothing more.
Suzanne.
But the voice did not stop. It crept closer
Suzanne.
until she felt the weight of it hovering near her ear.
Suzanne.
Her breath caught, her chest shuddered, and then she screamed, a raw, piercing sound that rattled her throat. She dragged the pillow over her head and pressed it down until the world dimmed. Somehow, she fell back asleep like that, heart pounding, body trembling. Morning came sharp and sudden. A sound jolted her awake, the phantom meow of the cat she never owned. She ran to the kitchen, phone clutched in her shaking hand. Her nerves were stretched thin, but the routine of making coffee gave her something to hold on to. She poured the steaming liquid into a mug, nearly spilling it, and forced herself to open the recording app. Her thumb hovered over the play button. At first, there was nothing but the steady sound of her breathing, a few soft snores. Then, silence, heavy and cold, and then her own voice. It was soft, calm, but strange, almost detached.
Who are you? Why are you here?
Suzanne froze. The mug trembled in her hand, drops of coffee spilling over the edge. She had no memory of saying those words. None. She told herself it was common. Sleepwalkers often speak in their sleep. This could be explained. It had to be. But a tight coil of dread wound itself around her spine. If she were speaking to someone in her sleep, who had she been speaking to? And more importantly, who had answered? Suzanne had no one to confide in. Not anymore. She had stopped speaking to her therapist weeks ago after a bitter falling out. The woman had pressed her too hard, too often, insisting her episodes were nothing more than stress and exhaustion. Suzanne knew better. Something was wrong. Something was happening inside her home, and she could feel it. Without her therapist, there was no one left to share the burden with. No one but the sleep recording app. Every night she set her phone beside her bed and pressed the record button. Every morning she forced herself to listen. At first, the sounds were nothing unusual. Faint snores, restless tossing and turning, the occasional incoherent mumble. But as the days passed, the voice on those recordings began to change. It was her voice, but not quite. The words were fragile at first, like broken whispers, leaves brushing against glass. Then they grew heavier, trembling with panic.
Please don't touch me. Please stop.
Leave my house! Don't come closer! Somebody! Help me!
The worst part was the silence that followed. Long, cavernous stretches of silence. She sounded as though she were speaking to someone, but there was no reply, no footsteps, no answering voice. Nothing but her own fragile pleas falling into emptiness. Sleep began to elude her entirely. She dreaded the weight of nightfall, dreaded the moment she would have to close her eyes. Each hour of rest stolen from her carved deeper hollows beneath her eyes. Her reflection in the mirror grew more distorted, dark circles spreading like bruises. She looked haunted. She was haunted. Then the little things started. Her bookshelf had always been her sanctuary. The rows were color-coded and ordered precisely. Black, navy blue, sky blue, orange, and green. One morning, she stood before it, her stomach tightening as she realized the colors had shifted. Sky blue stood first, followed by black, then green, and finally navy. The pattern was wrong in a way that pricked at her chest. She told herself she must have made the mistake herself. But the next morning, the order was different again. Then the wine glasses. She kept them lined neatly in the kitchen cabinet, crystal gleaming in precise formation. One morning, she opened the cupboard and froze. The pattern was broken. 2 glasses had shifted to the far side, placed back crooked, as if someone had held them, weighed them, then carelessly returned them. Her living room changed next. The couch, once her comfort, now seemed to resist her. The cushions felt stiffer, colder, as though someone else had sat there for hours before she had. Her chairs stood slightly askew each morning, no matter how carefully she aligned them the night before. The house itself seemed to turn against her. The front door, once silent, developed a slow, aching creak. She oiled it religiously every single night, yet the sound returned the following evening, louder, more insistent, as though mocking her efforts. And then the infestation began. At first, it was a single cockroach scuttling across her bathroom floor, then another, and another. Rats began to appear too, with faint scratching inside the walls and skittering claws in the corners of her vision. Suzanne had always kept her apartment immaculate. She cleaned more than most people breathed. To see filth creep in despite her effort made her stomach twist with helpless rage. The apartment she had once cherished had become a stranger. It no longer felt like hers. Each detail, each shift, each sound scraped against her sanity. Suzanne whispered to herself that it was stress, lack of sleep, hallucinations. She clung to rational explanations like a child clutching a blanket in the dark. But deep down, a colder truth swelled inside her. Something was happening in that apartment, and whatever it was growing bolder. The recordings were no longer just words. Some nights, she swore she heard breathing that wasn't hers, A hitch in the silence, a low intake of air, too deliberate to be background noise. Other nights, her own voice sounded almost unrecognizable, not fearful, not pleading, but engaged in some hushed conversation she had no memory of. Suzanne stopped listening to the recordings in the daylight. She couldn't bear to. Instead, she saved them all, the files piling up on her phone like evidence of a crime she couldn't explain. Her body weakened. Her hands trembled when she tried to drink her coffee. Her eyes burned at her computer at work, unable to focus. Her coworkers whispered about her pale skin, the gauntness of her face. But Suzanne said nothing. She had no one to tell. Every night, she returned home to the same walls, the same silence, the same creeping changes. And every morning, she woke with the same truth settling deeper in her chest. She was no longer living alone. Suzanne made a decision. She would stay awake. The nights had chipped away at her sanity, but this night, she would not surrender to sleep. No drifting, no closing her eyes, no whispered dreams haunting her. If she could keep herself awake long enough, she would prove to herself that it was all in her head. The plan sounded simple, but in her exhausted state, it was torture. Weeks of broken rest had left her body fragile, her mind clouded with fog. Her limbs ached with heaviness. Every blink threatened to stretch too long. But stubbornness burned inside her. She would not be a prisoner to something she couldn't see. The hours crawled. She brewed coffee after coffee, her hands trembling so badly that she nearly spilled the mug. By midnight, her body begged for release, her eyelids twitching with strain. By 2, she lay flat on her bed, staring up at the ceiling, the faint hum of her lamp the only sound in the apartment. Her lamp stayed on, though she dimmed it, telling herself she needed proof, not shadows. The pale light left the corners of her room hazy, dust motes drifting like tiny spirits. And then, just past 3, it began. At first, she thought her ears were playing tricks, a faint scrape, like fabric shifting against the wall. Then, clearer this time, a whisper. Her blood froze. It was her voice,
Suzanne.
low, trembling, unmistakably hers, though her
Suzanne.
lips had not moved. The sound came from the far corner of her bedroom, curling through the dimness like smoke.
Suzanne.
Panic clawed at her chest. Her breath came fast, ragged, as if she were suffocating under her own skin.
Suzanne.
For a long, painful moment, she wanted to scream, but no sound escaped her. She pressed her palms against her knees, forcing herself still. After several minutes, the whisper faded into silence. She almost convinced herself it had been her imagination. Almost. Until the whistle. It cut through the room, sharp and deliberate, like someone summoning attention. Suzanne's head snapped toward the sound, and then, horror. She heard herself scream. The sound came not from her throat, but from across the room. It was her voice, pitched high and terrified, echoing back at her.
Don't let him touch you.
Her skin prickled with ice. Her mouth had not moved, yet the words rang out, carrying the panic she had bottled up inside. Her chest heaved. Her eyes darted across the room, searching the shadows. The corners seemed darker now, more solid, as though something was gathering there, drawing closer. She pushed herself upright in bed, her heart pounding so loudly it drowned out thought. This was no dream. The whispers, the screams, the voices, something was here with her. She scanned the room again, her gaze sweeping over the bookshelf, the chair, the door. For a breathless second, everything seemed still, and then the truth settled on her with crushing certainty. The chill in the air, the wrongness pressing against her skin. Someone was in the room, not just a trick of her mind, not exhaustion, not hallucination, not her imagination twisting the dark into shapes. Someone or something was watching her, breathing with her, waiting. Suzanne's throat locked tight, her voice refusing to obey her. She gripped the blanket, her knuckles white, her body frozen. And in that frozen silence, the lamp flickered. Once, twice, then steadied, her eyes fixed on the corner where the whisper had first come. She could not see anyone, but she could feel it. The presence loomed heavy, like a shadow draped across her chest, weighing her down. She was no longer awake to prove she was safe. She was awake to face the truth, and the truth was worse than her dreams. The next morning, Suzanne's hands trembled as she opened the sleep app. She had sworn to herself she would not check it, but curiosity, or dread, was stronger than her will. This time, the recording was different. At first, the familiar, soft static, then her own voice, shaking and pleading.
Why did you choose to torment me?
But then came the reply, a voice not her own. It was deep, cold, and deliberate, a sound that seemed to slither beneath her skin.
Because you are perfect. You are beautiful. You are my next angel.
Suzanne froze. Her blood ran cold, her body stiff as though bound by invisible ropes. 27 years of life, and she had never heard this voice before. It was not imagined. It was not a dream. Her heart slammed against her ribs, and suddenly she was moving, stumbling across the floor, still clutching her phone, still in her nightdress. She grabbed her car keys with trembling fingers and fled. The drive to the police station blurred into panic. Tears streamed down her face as she pressed the accelerator, every passing shadow a threat. By the time she arrived, she was gasping, half coherent, rambling at the officers behind the desk. They led her to the investigation room. Together, they listened. The officers sat stiffly, their expressions hardening as the second voice played. They exchanged glances, silent but sharp, while Suzanne buried her face in her hands. When the words ended, "My next angel," the silence that followed was heavier than the voice itself. After a long deliberation, the officers decided to escort her back to her apartment. Suzanne clung to the hope that, at last, someone else would see it too. The disorder, the crawling vermin, the proof she wasn't losing her mind. But when they arrived, her apartment was spotless. The shelves were in perfect order. The couch was soft and inviting. The door no longer creaked. No cockroaches, no rats, no trace of the nightmare she had lived through. It was as if nothing had ever happened. One officer cleared his throat and suggested she seek therapy. Another handed her a card for a trusted specialist. Surely, she thought, they would believe her because of the recordings. But Suzanne felt insane. Suzanne stood there in her silent, perfect apartment, her phone heavy in her hand. The voice was still real, and it had chosen her. Her new therapist was calm and deliberate. He did not dismiss her fears. Instead, he asked her to arm herself with proof.
Keep more than one device recording. Place them in different parts of your home. If this presence is real, it will reveal itself. If not, we will still understand what your mind is doing at night.
Suzanne agreed. She was set to move out the following week, but after her session, she stayed up late packing boxes and arranging her belongings. Her exhaustion pressed heavily on her, yet she decided to attempt sleep without her pills. She placed 3 phones. One sat on the nightstand, one rested beneath her pillow, and one waited in the living room. When she lay back, her pulse pounded so loudly that she almost feared it would be recorded instead of the silence she prayed for. At 3 o'clock, the silence was shattered.
My beautiful night angel.
The voice did not echo from her phone. It filled the room itself. Her eyes opened, and she saw him. A man stood there. He was impossibly large, his body filling her vision, muscles taut and looming. His smile was wide and sickening. From the darkness of her wardrobe, he stepped out, a knife gleaming in his hand. Suzanne froze, her throat closing. Then a scream ripped out of her. She took the phone under her pillow, leaving the one recording on the nightstand, fingers trembling, and bolted. Her bare feet pounded against the floor as she fled the room. She did not dare to glance behind her, yet the sound of heavy footsteps followed, each one closer, each one louder. Her voice carried through the hallway as she cried for help. The shadow of the knife grew longer. She only cared about escaping alive. The police arrived at Suzanne's apartment after her frantic 911 call. The door hung open, swaying slightly as if someone had just slipped through it. Inside, the air was unnaturally still. The rooms were spotless, every book in order, the couch soft and perfect, as though nothing strange had ever occurred there. Only one thing remained. On the nightstand, Suzanne's phone was still recording. The officers exchanged wary glances before pressing the play button. The first sound was Suzanne's terrified scream. Her voice shook as she cried out.
What do you want from me? Why are you doing this? Let go of my hair!
If you tell me what you are to me, I will let you go.
The officers flinched as the slap cracked through the speaker. His voice grew harsher.
Say it. Do not be stubborn. I showed you what happened to the other stubborn girls.
There was silence, long enough to chill the room. Finally, Suzanne's voice broke through, soft, resigned, and trembling.
I am your beautiful night angel.
The recording cut off with her final scream, swallowed by static. And Suzanne was gone. I hope you've enjoyed today's story. Did it really happen? I'll leave that for you to decide. Before you go, please be sure to hit the like and subscribe buttons and leave a comment down below. Failure to do so may result in a personal visit from Baba Yaga. I'm just kidding. Or am I? Until next time.